Rick Smith welcomes Pete Dominick as the two look at the career of Clarence Thomas and the list of questionable behavior he's shown since he's been a member of the Supreme Court. Here's Rick.
Or at least what I've learned from all of the Clarence Thomas information, all the stuff that's coming out, all of the epiphanies, all of the news. I've learned that I have all the wrong friends. I need better friends. I haven't taken a $500,000 vacation. Nobody's bought my grandparents' house. Nobody pays my kids' tuition. I got the wrong friends. Now, Harlan Crow, the guy who's done all this stuff, he said that he would never, has never, nor would ever think of talking about matters related to the judiciary with Justice Clarence Thomas. He said they talk about things that friends talk about. Work. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the work talk. I've asked my good friend Pete Dominick to come talk with us. Pete's a stand-up comic, also host of the fabulous podcast Stand Up with Pete Dominick. You can find that at standupwithpetedominick.com. Pete, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I'm very excited to be joining you. I'm here to let you know that I would like to fly you and your spouse or whoever you want to Nova Scotia. There is no return flight, and I don't have any place for you to you'll be staying outside.
All right.
But then I'm going to pay tuition for somebody, not like a very expensive school, probably some church school, some after-school program, something very low end. But I feel bad. I mean, somebody needs to take care of you the way Harlan Crow is taking care of Clarence Thomas and so many others as well. I sense your sadness and jealousy there. So I'm here for you.
A little bit. Now, but here's the thing. I'm not seated on the Supreme Court. So I don't generally attract those kind of friends. It seems kind of odd because I've asked a lot of people, and I know some fairly wealthy people. I've asked them if they engage in this kind of stuff because I'm, again, trying to find a cheap vacation. They don't do it either. This seems, other than people in really powerful positions, this seems rare. This seems like rarefied air, Pete.
Oh, I think influence peddling is pretty common, all the way from local politics and local government, all the way up to the Supreme Court and the federal government. If you've got money, you want to keep that money, you want to make more money, and so you peddle influence. I mean, we've been seeing that all over human history, and it's always, I think it's a surprise when you see somebody who has a lot of money who doesn't use it to influence people to keep and make more money. I'm surprised when they don't.
No, I'm with you. It's because it's fairly cheap. I mean, to be honest, you think about the amount of money that's spent on politics, fairly cheap considering the return on investment.
The thing that I never really understand sometimes is like how we don't agree on kind of a sense of just a general sense of fairness. If I've been waiting in this line to get into the store or the restaurant or whatever it is, the amusement park, and then you can't come up and stand ahead of me. You can't budge me, as we would say in high school. There's a certain sense of fairness, and I think the idea that we don't want money in politics is a pretty decent idea. I would think that most people would agree to try to limit the donations and disclose them if need be. But unfortunately, it's not about fairness. It's about winning, at least on the right. I mean, on the left, it's for a long time. I mean, we've been trying to, just like pretty much every other country in the world, publicly finance campaigns and create as much transparency as possible, overwhelmingly. But this right-wing Supreme Court, starting with John Roberts and Citizens United, has made it harder and harder and harder to find out who's giving money, how much money, where it's coming from, and I'll never really understand that because I want to be able to say that fairness isn't a liberal or conservative idea. It's not a political idea. It's just a human idea. Fairness.
No, it seems like it should be, and it seems like when you talk to people, face to face, they get it. But individually they get it. But in mass, a lot of people, no, money is speech. Corporations are people, and no, they're not. No, yeah. It's not, or it shouldn't be. And I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not in almost any other country, civilized country. I mean, they have publicly financed political campaigns and parliamentary systems, and many of them, of course, they don't have our type of gerrymandering. There's all kinds of different ways to rig the system, and we've rigged it just about as much as we possibly can. But when it comes back to campaign finance, much less, buying a judge, I thought that at least was out of bounds. I'm shocked. Honestly, I am shocked, knowing everything we know about Clarence Thomas, that he has allowed himself to be so bought by this guy. It's hard to understand how he can maintain his position on the Supreme Court, but there's no sign that his job is in any way in danger.
No, there's not. But here's the thing. I mean, I was talking about this, not too long ago, when Scalia passed, where was Scalia?
Yep, he was on a hunting trip with a billionaire.
Yeah, I mean, on that billionaire's resort. I mean, This is not new. It's been happening for years. We've just turned away from it, and no one's ever held accountable. It's one of the open secrets. It's like the thing over the weekend. I'm sure you saw the 60 Minutes piece on the Pentagon. How long we've been talking about $400 toilet seats? Yeah. And I got emails from people surprised. Oh my God, can you believe this? Yes, I can believe it. We're getting gouged at every turn, whether it's missiles or it's eggs. We're getting gouged by corporate America and these people every single day.
Yeah, it's not surprising that what's going on in the Department of Defense, obviously, with spending. And I'm glad that they were able to do that audit and somehow catch them that they were getting screwed. But I mean, going back to Clarence Thomas or Scalia, it's one thing to take a vacation. It's one thing to take a trip. It's almost fungible. You could say, hey, listen, I paid my own way. This is a friend of mine. He happens to be wealthy, whatever. Maybe he put me up. I shouldn't have done that. It looks bad. But Clarence Thomas let this guy buy his mom's house, put a kid through school. I mean, the list goes on and on with what Harlan Crow has done for Clarence Thomas and his family. It's unprecedented, Rick. We've never seen anything like this, and I think it's worth just mentioning that in terms of a judge. I mean, when I worked at the Colbert Report, I remember in different jobs I've had where politicians came through, like John Kerry came in or Bernie Sanders came in, like they wouldn't even take like a pretzel. They wouldn't take anything that seemed a ride to the show, like in any way a monetary transaction of anything. They just wouldn't do it. And to do that, you're not supposed to appear in any way like you're being compromised, like you're being paid off. That's most that work in government. And it's the exception, I think, though, the guys that take money like this, because it's just a great way to destroy your reputation. I just can't believe it's a Supreme Court justice. Or I guess I can.
I can't. I can believe it. I've been saying for years they should wear the robes like NASCAR jackets.
Yeah.
Look, this court more than any, probably in the last 100 years is on the side of corporate America, which is why, again, I come back to this debt ceiling fight. I think Biden should invoke the 14th Amendment, throw it over to the Supreme Court, and let the corporations take care of it. Because evidently our political system won't.
Well, he's probably going to have to do something, though. That's the only real thing that he could do, because otherwise the destruction will be permanent for all of us forever. I mean, like interest payments for everybody will go up forever. He's going to have to do something like that, but there's no good answer. I mean, this Supreme Court could very well overturn it and make him look even worse and then blame him, and Democrats could get blamed in the election. There's no real good answers here. I mean, the problem, going back to the debt ceiling here, was that they couldn't never gotten rid of it. People keep saying Democrats should have gotten rid of it when they had the votes. They never had the votes. They never had the votes. You had two senators that would never allow for it. But still, I still have to go back to the Supreme Court being bought and paid for. Rick, like they don't run for office every 2 years or every 6 years. Like it's harder to pay them off. I think ideologically, they're obviously, five or six justices that are very pro-corporate everything. But that could be their ideological point of view as opposed to being influenced by money. I'm still shocked that Clarence Thomas has allowed himself to be put in this position. And even before that, Jenny Thomas being an insurrectionist, I mean, and everything that she's been involved in, all the money that she's taken and not disclosed. This guy's had more chances to disclose all of that. He didn't. He should be gone. He never should have been there to begin with. Thank you, Joe Biden, on that. But he's not going anywhere. I think it's important to. I mean, John Roberts won't even go up and answer questions at the Senate. He's like, I'm good, thank you.
No, he knows there's nothing good, because I got to wonder how much of the other ones are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Again, you come back to how a good number of them got onto the court, the power of this Federalist Society. This is not just something new that popped up out of last week. This is something from the early 70s that they have built, that they have harnessed, that they have honed into a machine to create the people that they put on the court. This isn't just by happenstance. These people were created to be on this court. They were funded all along the way, probably from the days when they were in college all the way through now, groomed to take these seats. So for me, I am not surprised in any way, shape, or form of what Thomas has done. He just got caught.
Kavanaugh and Gorsuch went to the same high school, Rick.
Of course they did. And they were part of the same Federalist Society that ushered them through.
Yeah, the Federalist Society, by the way, just got like $1 billion, right? I mean, they're not going anywhere ever in our lifetime. I mean, they're just going to keep spending that money and trying to influence, but that's why you got to keep Democrats in charge so that they can't appoint those crazy judges. But still, I mean, the idea that there's no code of ethics for the Supreme Court the way there is for every other court in the land, like all Americans should agree that there should be a code of ethics, and they should not have lifetime tenure. That is preposterous. Yeah. The hearing should be televised. Don't get me started on the reforms that should happen at the Supreme Court that aren't going to happen, but we should be all in support of it. Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, because everybody has something to gain or lose if the wrong people are in charge.
So last week we had Ed Markey on the show talking about his bill to expand the court. I personally don't think it's got a snowball's chance, but it's an interesting idea. Throw an additional 4 justices on the court up to 13, swing the balance to somewhere back to sane. This maybe for a little while gets solved. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's dead on arrival. I appreciate Senator Markey. I like him a lot. I'm glad that he's proposed that idea. I love what Sheldon Whitehouse has tried to do to expose the capture of the Supreme Court and Congress and the corruption. I think those guys are doing really important work trying to create, a groundswell of support for some of these reforms. But the vast majority of Americans aren't going to support it, and you're not going to get President Biden, obviously, to support it. I mean, people have been saying pack the court for a long time, but there's never been any hint of any movement on that, much less, reinstating the Voting Rights Act or restoring the Voting Rights Act. I mean, we can't even get that done. I mean, a lot of that, by the way, it doesn't have to do with Democrats not having the political courage. I don't love that. Or even Joe Biden not having the political courage. It goes back to the United States Senate filibuster rules. Yep. And as long as you got Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema there, you couldn't pack that court. You couldn't do it. You couldn't add anything. You can't get some of the most important legislation like the Voting Rights Act being restored, or criminal justice reform, or so many other things to be done without some kind of really extreme measures. We cannot get it through that damn U.S. Senate.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Pete Dominick. Pete is stand-up comic, also host of the fabulous podcast, Stand Up with Pete Dominick. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. I want to get your thoughts on some of the entrants into the 2024 presidential foray. Today, Tim Scott, he has announced that he's in. What I do find interesting that he's a guy who wants to ban abortion totally. And according to a Post-Courier article, South Carolina's 46 counties, 14 of them have no OBGYN doctors at all. Another 5 only have 1. So in 19 counties out of the 46 in South Carolina, there are 5 OBGYNs in that entire area. And we're going to force more people, we're going to force more births. Brilliant.
Yeah, he's running for vice president. I think it's pretty clear. Name recognition. He doesn't have much of that. The vast majority of Americans don't know who he is. The idea that a black Republican could win a presidential primary, much less the nomination, is a joke. Obviously, let's be honest.
$30 million from Larry Ellison into his Opportunity Matters fund. That's going to get him a lot of name recognition.
Is that right? Larry Ellison gave Tim Scott $30 million?
That's what's been reported.
Wow.
It's been in motion since 2022 midterms when Ellison donated $30 million to a pro-Scott super PAC Opportunity Matters funds.
I mean, we saw Tim Scott have his best day of the campaign today, and it was a horrible day. I mean, like we've been having a fairly highbrow conversation up until now, and I'm going to, devolve it into the basics of politics, which as a stand-up comedian, as a performer, as a radio guy, I get this intimately. There's a certain way that you have to carry yourself, perform, speak, and behave, or people won't trust you. They won't believe you. They'll be uncomfortable to support you for office. And you've got Ron DeSantis and Tim Scott, who are two guys who have no idea how to behave. They have weird behavior. They say things strangely. They act strangely. Today, Tim Scott his 40 minutes or so talking were a disaster. At one point, he's like, I can't hear you. Like Hulkamania, running to each side of the ring and holding his hand at his ear. I can't hear you. He was trying to get people fired up, and he wasn't doing a good job. I think, honestly, like it was cringeworthy. Watching him today, I was cringing because he's not good at it. He's not good at being on stage. I mean, Donald Trump's an exception. He's an exception. There's nobody like him. There'll never be anybody like him. It's still hard to believe that he's, in any way popular just because of the way that he looks, the way that he acts, the way that he talks. Someone might say, if, he can do it, maybe Tim Scott or Ron DeSantis. Nope. Donald Trump is one of a kind. He was hugely famous for terrible things before he ran for president. Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis are so awkward, so unlikable, so unrelatable. They're going nowhere just because they don't know how to appear in public, talk, behave, and make people like them. They can't do it. I'm surprised they've gotten this far.
Well, look, they got billionaires behind them. I mean, this is the weird kind of thing. One guy's got a whole bunch of money, said, I'm going to push this guy through. I mean, Rick Santorum had a guy who kept pushing him into the presidential election cycles. He never had a chance of winning, but he had a guy with a lot of money.
He never had a chance of winning, but at least he wasn't like super awkward. Like
really?
I worked with Santorum a lot. I worked with him a lot at CNN. Like he was not a real awkward guy, like a normal guy with crazy beliefs. But like the way that he carried himself, the way that he communicated was like pretty normal for a congressman and then a senator. That's how he was. He was passionate. He's angry. He's obstinate, always wrong, whatever. But like Ron DeSantis and Tim Scott, listen, put billions of dollars behind them. They put billions of dollars behind movies, and sometimes nobody goes to see them, Rick. Rick, whatever your name is. I keep saying Ron DeSantis. I want to call him Rick DeSantis. It has nothing to do with you. I just don't want to call him by his own name for some reason. And I don't think anybody does because the guy is so bizarre, Rick. He's a weirdo, and it doesn't matter how much money you put him behind him because when he walks into a diner like he did in New Hampshire this week or whenever he was up there, he's just ridiculous.